नमो भगवते ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण welcome all yeah few all uh, to our Saturday satsang. So we are going to continue with the Bhagavad Gita summary discussion. Let me share my screen. Okay. So chapter 4 4.2, this supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession. So this fourth chapter called transcendental knowledge, uh, um, Krishna is saying, directly indicating that this is a supreme science. So this is not some imagination or some speculation. It's a science. Science means that which can be experienced. So this Bhagavad Gita is Gnana and Vijnana. Vijnana means realized knowledge. That means that we can actually experience it. And it is received through disciplic succession, because Krishna says that evam parampara praptam evam rajasho vidu sakalene mahta yogo nashta parantapa. Says that it seemed to be lost, and then hence this disciplic succession is being re-established through you, Arjuna. But before that, this knowledge was given to Vivaswan, who was the sun god, and from Vivaswan gave it to Ikshvaku. Then Ikshvaku gave it to Manu. Manu gave it to Ikshvaku. So like this, this has come in disciplic succession. Disciplic succession means from Guru to Shishya to, then Shishya becomes Guru. So then he passes it on to his disciple, and so on. It has to be an unbroken chain through which the knowledge is passed as it is. As it is means, as the all paramparas, authentic Vaishnava paramparas begin with Krishna, and comes. So there are four authentic paramparas: Brahma, then Sri, Rudra, and Kumara. So Krishna gave the knowledge to Brahma, Krishna gave the knowledge to Shiva, Krishna gave the knowledge to Lakshmi, Krishna gave the knowledge to Kumaras. And from them to their disciples and so on and so forth, the knowledge has to come. So Krishna is highlighting the importance of receiving transcendental knowledge through disciplic succession. 4.3, that very ancient science. What does Bhagavad Gita teach? So Krishna is saying here that this science, it teaches a relationship with the Supreme. It teaches us what should be our relationship with the Supreme. Now most religions talk about, I mean, in most religions, it's mostly about some kind of worship. You go to the temple, you offer some worship, give some dakshina, do some puja, but they don't really say what is our relationship with the Supreme Lord. So Krishna himself is stating that in Bhagavad Gita. So he is himself saying that this Bhagavad Gita is about the relationship of the Jiva with the Supreme. And he's saying this science which deals with this relationship is today told by me to you, because you have a very special qualification, because you are my devotee as well as my friend, and can therefore understand the transcendental mystery of the science. So because this is mysterious, the science of bhakti, Bhagavad Gita, is very mysterious. So many people have read Bhagavad Gita, but they have not become devotees. They worship impersonal Brahman. Actually, Krishna himself says that this path is very difficult. In 12th chapter, he answers this question, that is going through this impersonal Brahman is very difficult task. Uh, but still people don't come to the conclusion after reading Bhagavad Gita because it's a mystery. It's not. It's like some, it's what language is Bhagavad Gita in? Somebody might say it's written in Devanagari script. It was written originally in Sanskrit. Somebody may say, okay, I'm reading in English. Somebody might say something else. But really, it's only in the language of devotion, right? So those who don't accept this in a devotional disciplic succession, they will not be able to understand it. That is why Krishna is saying here that because you are my devotee, you will understand this mystery. This mystery is not revealed to everybody. Hmm. It's a book available, everybody can read it, but they cannot get their hands onto the mystery, right? So this is a mystery. It's not very easily available. And who can understand? Only a devotee of Krishna can understand. Because Krishna is talking to his devotee Arjuna. Like, and Prabhupada has mentioned this multiple times, saying that when two businessmen are speaking, what will they be speaking? They'll be speaking about business, making money, how to grow the business. They will not be speaking about football, or they will not be speaking about religion. Like that, what will two devotees speak? They will speak about bhakti. What will the Supreme Lord speak with his devotee? He will speak bhakti. Why will he speak something else? And this we can understand because as devotees, it's not like if we are having some conversation, we don't discuss any topic apart from Krishna. So one can understand, enter into the mystery of this supreme science only if he is a devotee or he's hearing from a devotee and he wants to become a devotee, right? So only if we want to become a devotee, if we want to serve Krishna, only then we can understand the mystery of Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise, we can't understand the mystery of Bhagavad Gita. And of course, Arjuna has another special qualification, which is that he is also mm, friend of Krishna. This is a special prerogative. This not everybody will have. But still, we can understand if you are a devotee of Krishna, at least we should be in Krishna's, Arjuna was in Sakhya Rasa. We should at least be in Dasya, in the mood of servitude, in the mood of knowing that we are the servant. The relationship, what is the basic relationship between the Jiva and the Supreme? That we are servants and Krishna is the Supreme Lord. So as long as we are fixed in that mood and that we are engaged in serving the Lord in Dasya, then also we can understand the supreme science. But if we are not um, practicing being a sadhaka, then we cannot understand the science. That is why actually, this Bhagavad Gita translated into many other languages, but especially we are looking at Kannada Bhagavad Gita, and it's not been translated as it is because the translators were not devotees, so they don't understand. Because for us to be able to understand Prabhupada's language, we should have read his books. We should be in that mood of trying to practice bhakti. Only then we can understand. So it's a very mystery. It's a transcendental mystery. The transcendental because it doesn't belong to this material world. It's not like somebody can say, I have capability. I can read this language. I have intellectual capability, so I will read and understand. No, it's not possible. We will end up somewhere else. And we are very fortunate because actually, even if we are reading by ourselves, we are reading with the help of Prabhupada because we are reading his purports and trying to understand Krishna's words. So we might still be able to understand, but still the mood has to be that of servitude. Otherwise, we will not be able to understand Bhagavad Gita. Right. So that is very important. So only if you are a devotee, um, we can understand Bhagavad Gita. 4.6. Although
So
I am on,
question.
yeah.
So when Krishna says that because you are my devotee as well as my friend, I am speaking this spiritual science to you.
Mhm.
Uh, is there any significance of Arjuna him being his friend? Because Lord Krishna also spoke like everything emanates from me, and there is a lot of I, and Lord Krishna is speaking about himself. And
Mhm.
normally, non-devotees and who are not friends with Krishna, maybe an atheistic person, they don't appreciate this language, right? So I
Mhm.
mean, I was in a preaching center, and one of the person asked me that why Krishna himself is speaking about him, why don't some other authority speaks on Krishna's behalf? So for example, if Lord Shiva, he could have spoken that, okay, Arjuna, that Lord Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, then this person was saying that probably I could have related or relished that more, because it looks like Krishna is boasting about himself.
Yeah.
And a lot of people might have this misunderstanding that I don't like Krishna because he speaks about himself only, and nothing like other demigods who always speak about Lord Vishnu and other things. So,
Yeah.
is this understanding correct, that just because Arjuna was Krishna's friend, Lord Krishna spoke like this? Otherwise, normally Lord Krishna is quite shy and he doesn't want to reveal in great detail about himself. Is this understanding correct?
No, no. Okay. So many things to be noted here. See, first of all, we cannot conclude on Krishna's nature. We cannot say Krishna is shy. Okay. No, I mean, Supreme Lord, he has, like, for example, if can I conclude even about a normal human being, I cannot conclude, right? Because it's not easy to judge or come to a conclusion. Anyway, we don't have to. Krishna's innumerable qualities, we cannot encapsulate him or capture him in one or two words, right? That's one part, just for understanding. Now, with respect to two things, right? So yes, so why Krishna is speaking about himself? Um, Before that, has other devotees or demigods spoken about Krishna? Absolutely. Whole of Padma Purana is glorification of Lord Shiva to Parvati of Krishna. Vishnu's supreme position, he glorifies. And so, yes, if somebody wants to read it that way, they can go and read Padma Purana, Vishnu Purana for that instance. So many, Padma Purana mainly, because between Shiva and Parvati, there's discussion. Uh, Now, for example, so somebody wants to know about Narendra Modi. Okay. Now, and somebody has written, somebody has spoken about Narendra Modi. Then people will be saying, okay, okay, this person has written about Narendra Modi, but how much can I trust? Uh, can I trust? What if Narendra Modi comes and tells himself, yeah, yes, what he's saying is correct, right? Then we will trust. Then we will develop more trust, right? And we will hear. Mm. So Krishna speaking about himself is actually the display of the most supreme, most humility, Namrata. Hmm. क्यों? Because normally nobody wants to talk about themselves. I mean, just think, if some, we all of us are there, trying to practice bhakti for a few years, and if somebody starts glorifying us, we will want to find a way out of running away from that place, or we will in return glorify the other devotee who is glorifying us, etc., right? No, when this quality we only demonstrate, why would that quality, I mean, and all qualities are there in Krishna. It is natural for Krishna to not want to talk about himself, right? But this is like Prabhupada, in his purports, many times he says that pure devotees are like this, and many a times he is also indicating, talking about himself. That is supreme humility of these great personalities, that they come down to the platform of actually trying to talk about themselves, because if they're so supreme, that Krishna is so supreme, that if he doesn't talk about himself, most, I mean, and Krishna tells in Bhagavad Gita, most people can't understand me. Since most people can't understand me, I am the only person who can speak about myself. I mean, that is Krishna's supreme position. If somebody doesn't understand the position, how exalted position of Krishna is, and that he's coming down to our level and telling us, saying that, Baba, you don't know about me, so I am telling about you, about myself. So please understand. Now, the important part of those people who are worried about Krishna boasting about himself, they say, okay, fine, let Krishna talk about himself, but you at least try to understand what Krishna is saying, why he's saying, and what he's saying. Accept his conclusion. Then you will understand Krishna's position, and you will not come and question saying that why Krishna is speaking like this about himself. Because
Yeah.
if Krishna doesn't talk about himself, we will never be able to understand. Even after Krishna has spoken about himself, people don't understand Krishna. What if he didn't speak about himself at all?
Yeah.
And after all this, Krishna is saying, Ekam is just like one drop of my opulence. All this. Don't worry, Arjuna. Why you are worried about all this? It's all of this just drop of my opulence, because we have to understand Krishna's position. He's humbly coming and presenting himself, saying that, see, I have you. Krishna, Arjuna is asking you talk about your opulence. Krishna is saying, okay, I will talk about my opulence, but this is just one drop. Don't even try to go further,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it is just the humility of that, if Narendra Modi talks about himself, saying that hum aise karte hain, like this is how I play with my friends, relatives, etc. I go here, I go there, people will be all ears. Oh, Narendra Modi is speaking. Oh, he likes this food. Oh, he likes to go there, he likes to go there. No, but if Krishna is saying, they're saying you're arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing if Narendra Modi says, they will all ikata karenge. Like they will call all neighbors, come, come, come. Today Narendra Modi is talking about himself. Let's hear. There is no arrogance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or if some film star or somebody, they come and talk about themselves for 5 minutes, people will pay thousands of rupees to come and hear them. But if Krishna is speaking, then see, this is a reflection of our own false ego, our own arrogance, our own wanting to be separate from Krishna. This is just reflected in such people. And I have my own uncle who says this, who said, he's so boastful, Krishna. He's blaspheme. So I just, came out of the place saying that no point talking to this person. See, Krishna's position, if somebody feels that Krishna is being arrogant, I mean, for his position, this is nothing, no? I mean, he talking about himself in some, what, 2 chapters of opulence of Krishna, 50, 60 verses. How small, how insignificant it is to glorify Krishna's position. People don't understand. So anyway, I mean, the reason why Krishna is talking about it is because he has to give information about himself. There is no other way anybody can understand him. Because see, the whole conversation between Vyasdev and Narada. Vyasdev is given all the Vedas. He's still in Bhagavatam. He's still being, he's feeling incomplete. He's saying, I'm not happy. I don't know. I just feel incomplete. Then Narada Muni says one sentence. He says, you just described about Supreme Brahman nicely. You're happy, no? The whole of Vedas conclusion, people will come to the conclusion of Supreme Brahman. Brahman is supreme. So now, beyond all that confusion has to be cleared. Krishna has to come and say that the Supreme Brahman is part of me. Who else can say that? Because whole of Vedas has not been able to clarify Supreme Lord Bhagavan's position. So it is, I mean, so Krishna himself has come to do that, to say that, okay, now I am speaking myself. So don't worry about what anybody else has written. Vyasadeva has also written about me, but it's not very clear, right? So Krishna himself is coming and speaking to clarify all doubts, to remove all confusion about who is who.
Yeah. Okay. No,
Okay.
it's clear.
Okay, 4.6. Although I am unborn, so who can say this about Krishna? Who can say this about Krishna? If anybody else says, they'll say, you don't understand. Krishna took birth from Devaki. Krishna took birth from yeah, Vasudev. Why are you saying that he's unborn? I don't trust you. I can't believe what you're saying. So Krishna is coming and saying, no, 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 I am unborn. You understand from me because I am the person. I know whether I am born or I am unborn. And I am unborn. And my transcendental body never deteriorates. So it's not like material body. So he's clearly clarifying his positions. I am not material. I don't belong to this material world. I don't have a material body. And since I don't have a material body deteriorates. So it takes birth, then grows, dwindles, deteriorates. My body doesn't deteriorate because my body is transcendental. Hmm? And although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear every millennium in my own transcendental form. Atma Maya. I appear, nobody forces me to appear, or I don't appear like normal living entities. Because I am the Lord of all the living entities. So I don't appear like them. But I still appear. I still appear.
Yeah.
But I appear in my own form. In my own form. This one form of Krishna is unknown to all of Vedas, right? Like people don't understand. Mm. And Krishna is saying, okay, I appear every millennium. Why do I appear? He's saying that in the next verse. He said, why do I appear? Yada yada hi dharmasya. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice. So this is very important. What is religious practice? Religious practice doesn't mean that we go to temple, we offer some, puja, and then after that we go to a pub and or we eat some non-vegetarian food, or we go to a movie and we say, I did my religious practice. I went to the temple, put whatever 10 rupees, 20 rupees, and I came, and rest of the time is spent sinfully. This is not religious practice. Religious practice means knowing who am I, what is my relationship with the Supreme, and what is my duty. That is religion. Dharmena hina pashubi naranam. Without understanding of this as religion, one is just an animal, two-legged animal, Shastra calls. Human beings who don't understand what dharma is, they're just two-legged animals. So Krishna is saying, whenever and wherever there's a decline of this religion, Sanatana Dharma, this is called Sanatana Dharma. Whenever there's a decline of this Sanatana Dharma, wherever, it doesn't have to be only in India, it can be anywhere in this creation. And whenever there is a decline in religion, not just decline, there also has to be an increase in irreligion, because some period of time in this creation, there will be decline in religion, but there might not be so much increase in irreligion. But Krishna is saying, when there is a decline and also when there is a predominant rise, today only we will see around ourselves and say there is already a rise in religion, but it is not predominant. What does predominant mean? Means that it is only religion, nothing else will be there. So people like us who are trying to do bhakti will not exist, or will be hiding in some caves, like Bhagavatam says, right? We will run away from, because most of the world will be atheists. There will be absolute irreligion. Then Krishna will appear as Kalki. At that time, I descend myself. And till that position, till that situation happens, there will be small upheavals in this material world, like small, comparatively smaller disturbances, but which for us might be big disturbances, like for example corona. It's just a very small in comparison with what will happen when Krishna himself appears, but still it is indicating that irreligion is increasing. That is the indication. This is called collective karma. There is individual karma, then there is collective karma. When the collective karma of the world increases, then there will be devastations, like tsunami happened, corona, then something else somewhere else, somewhere floods happening, somewhere earthquakes happening. All this is collective, called collective karma. And so many people in today's world, people want to go and stay in outside countries, completely bad collective karma. Those places is generally not a good idea. I mean, India is the safest place on the face of the earth. Even now, even today, even many years from now, it will be the safest place, right? Because most dharmic place. Even here, there is so much religion. Still, it is the most dharmic place. So he's saying, at that time I will descend. So somebody might ask, why Krishna has to wait for so long? No, Krishna is not waiting. Krishna is giving other indications, but unfortunately, people of Kali Yuga, Manda, Sumanda Matayo, Manda Bhagya, very dumb. They can't understand. They can't read into all this. I mean, simple. Corona happened. Few people maybe, opened up their eyes and wanted to understand, saying why this is happening. So many people suffering, dying, etc., etc. But now, if you see, everything is going back to normal, and people are back to their own world, back to their own world, forgotten. They'll forget. So it's so unfortunate, even though there are very clear cues, indications, telling people, saying that wake up, wake up, wake up. They don't want to wake up. What can do Krishna do? Then it will increase, 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 increase till dharma ceases to exist. Then Lord, Supreme Lord himself has to come to destroy, clean up. complete cleanup of human race has to happen, then Satyuga will again start. 4.8. To deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principle of religion, I myself appear millennium after millennium. So I appear, right? So Krishna is very clearly saying that the whole maintenance of this material world is happening because of me. I have to take care. Otherwise, actually, in Bhagavatam, we will read in the beginning of creation, all the energies are activated. Then all the demigods are uh, they appear and they are created. Then demigods say, "No, we are all here. All energies are there, but we don't know what to do. We don't seem to. We all seem to be going in different directions." And then they pray to the Supreme Lord, saying that only you can put us all together in a way that we will work towards a constructive creation of this material world. And then the Supreme Lord enters all the energies himself. So even for creating, unless the Supreme Lord enters it, it cannot be created. Even for maintenance, if he's not around, it cannot be maintained. Even for destruction, he takes the form of, Shiva Gunavatara, and he destroys. So this whole material world, for its creation, upkeep, and destruction, the Supreme Lord himself is required. And all this he is doing for whom? For us. Why? Because we want to enjoy independent of Krishna. We want a place where Krishna doesn't exist. So for us, Krishna is taking up all this trouble. So we have to see the mercy of Krishna. Okay, so this is the super verse. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities. Transcendental nature of my appearance. I didn't take birth like a normal material person. So my appearance is also transcendental. It doesn't belong to this material world. And my activities are also transcendental. Okay, I lift a Govardhan on my, little finger on my left hand, and that is transcendental. Don't look at it from your material viewpoint. Don't put logic and say, how is it possible that somebody can lift? So, uh, so one who knows the transcendental nature knows that this doesn't belong to this material world. It is Krishna's energy, and Krishna's energy doesn't belong to this material world, and it cannot be. We cannot box it in our logical brain. One who can understand this, he upon leaving this body, he will not take his birth again in this material world, but he will attain my eternal abode. So Krishna is saying so simple for us to get out of this material world. First of all, I mean, all of us have to be clear saying that we want to get out of this material world. This material world is not a place for gentlemen. And it's going to get only worse as Kali Yuga progresses. As we will read in Bhagavatam, as Kali Yuga progresses, this world will become more and more nasty. It's not for gentlemen, Shastra says. Right? So we should be clear that really there isn't anything meaningful in this material world. I mean, it's Dukhalayam. Yeah, intermittently we will see some respite from relief from our suffering, and we think of that as happiness, but that is really not happiness. That is just time when there is no distress is defined as happiness, but that is not real happiness. Real happiness is there only when we engage our senses in the service of the Supreme Lord. So he's saying that so if you know that my appearance and my activities are transcendental, then upon leaving this body, you don't come back. You won't come back to this material world. You will come back to my eternal abode. Because once we are clear, once we know the transcendental nature of Krishna, then what we will do? We will understand, oh, this is Krishna's position. Oh, this is our position. Oh, so which means that I have to serve Krishna. Okay, so I will engage in the service of Krishna. And that's it. That is our eternal position of servant, being a servant of Krishna. So knowing doesn't mean knowing. So if somebody says, I know the traffic rules, what would you expect from that person? That you know that the person knows the rules and hence he will apply. Not that he's just theoretically saying, okay, green means go, red means stop, and then he goes onto the street with on a bike, and then it is red and he just jumps the red. Then he cannot say, I know the traffic rules. Then somebody will say, why did you break the law? No, I just felt like. Okay, then you pay the fine. So just knowledge without application is useless. So when somebody says, I know the transcendental nature of Krishna and his appearance and his activities, that means that naturally I will become situated in that natural position of serving him, because he is the Supreme Lord and I am his servant. And one who does this, he will not come back to this material world after giving up this body. Please understand this. Devotees who are been practicing, devotees who are newly practicing, this we can make this as our last birth in this miserable material world, simply by sticking to this simple process of serving the Supreme Lord with love and devotion. So simple. It is so simple. Simply by doing this, we will go back. We'll get out of this material world. But we want to we don't want to we don't want this. We don't have faith in Krishna's words. So we don't commit ourselves to this. If instead of this statement, say, assume Krishna had said, one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities will get $1 million or $10 million within the next 15 days. There would have been line. Like we wouldn't have been able to cater to to the needs of people, because there is no immediate material benefit coming out of this. Of course, there's immediate material benefit from the perspective of eternal time. Just this end of this body is like really immediate, because home very few years, right? Like maximum people will live up to 100 years. So it's very small considering the long, time of eternal time, right? So we are actually getting the most valuable result by knowing about Krishna. But since it is not understood by normal people, it is not a normal form of enjoyment, like money or property, etc. So people don't seem to take this seriously. But Krishna is giving the greatest benediction. He's actually giving he's giving a blessing here, saying one who knows this, he will not come back. How powerful. I mean, who else can say this? We were discussing, right? Like why Krishna is saying, who else can say this? Who else can say this? You know about my nature, you won't come back to this material world. Amazing. I mean, we should understand, we should recognize these is the secret. These are the secrets in Bhagavad Gita, that people have to discover these secrets. And it's so simple. It's just one line. If we stick to this line, our life is perfect. So simple. 4.10, being freed from attachment, fear, and anger. So Krishna is saying, what is the use of this? What is the use of knowing my transcendental nature? He's saying, being freed. So you will become free from attachment, fear, and anger. You will become fully absorbed in me. You will take shelter in me. And like this, many persons in the past have become purified by knowledge of me. So by just knowing my position, people become purified. Why? Because they know, oh, okay, I was thinking so long that I am the enjoyer. No, I'm not the enjoyer. I'm the servator. Oh, Krishna is the enjoyer. So this is knowledge about Krishna. So by this, we become purified. We stop trying to enjoy independent of Krishna. So we become purified. They're saying many persons having known this become purified, and they attained my transcendental love for me. And because they attained transcendental love for me, they came to my abode. So the result of knowing the supreme nature, transcendental nature of Krishna is that we have to end up in attaining transcendental love for Krishna. And how is that possible? First of all, we should become free from attachment, fear, and anger, which are all material. Vita, raga, bhaya, krodha. And we will become absorbed in Krishna. And we will take shelter in Krishna, because Krishna says, Sarva dharman parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja. And by living like this, we will achieve love for Krishna, which is the immediate goal for us. Krishna Prema, this is called. We will discuss these things later, what Krishna Prema means, etc., etc. Right? But by just knowing about Krishna's position, accepting him, being absorbed in his thoughts, by taking shelter of him, practicing whatever process he has given or acharyas have given, we will attain transcendental love for Krishna. But then Krishna is saying, okay, see, I have given you this. Okay, in next verse he's saying 4.11. He says, I've given you this, but different people surrender differently. I have told, surrender, complete, take refuge of me. But not everybody will follow this. So he says, okay, based on how people surrender, I will reward them accordingly. If they surrender 100%, then I will reward them 100%. That means that they will achieve transcendental love. If they surrender 10%, I will only reward them 10% results. But he's saying, whether they do 10% or 100%, everybody is following my path, because eventually they have to come to Krishna. They have to come to me. But they will take it's like going from one destination to one place to another. You can take the fastest route, shortest route, or you can also take, roundabout route, but still you have to come to the destination. So other people who don't surrender fully to Krishna, they're just taking the longer route, but they still have to come to Krishna. So Krishna is saying, I am telling very easy, surrender unto me. But okay, not everybody will surrender. According to their surrender, I will reward them. So even in the practice of bhakti, sometimes we will ask other devotees, oh, how is it with you? What are you doing? Hey, bhakti we cannot compare it. We cannot compare one person's practice of bhakti with another person's, because it totally depends. It's an internal state. It depends on a person's surrender. So if a person who is 100% surrendered is talking to a person who is 10% surrender, their experiences in life will be very different. How Krishna, takes control of their life is very different. So it's very important actually. So that is why our acharyas say that we have to associate with devotees who are more progress than us, who have done more, who accomplish more progress than us. Because then we'll understand, it's like, somebody who is in, like first year engineering, he will talk to somebody in the second year, third year, he will understand, okay, next it will be like this. And after that, next year it will be like this. So somebody who's at 10% level, when he talks to a person who is at 40% level, he say, oh, okay, 10% level is this like this, 40% is like this. Then that person who is in the 40% level, he will say, yeah. I was also 10%, then I did this, and then I came to 40%, and now this how Krishna reciprocates. So that is why we should associate with the devotees who are more advanced than us. Of course, we also have peer friendship with other devotees who are like us, but we should also associate with devotees who are more advanced than us. So we can learn how to surrender more. Okay. 4.13. If there are any questions, you can please intervene. According to 3 modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the 4 divisions of human society are created by me. Now Krishna is saying, why now people don't surrender unto me? Now, why do different people surrender differently? Because they are under the control of 3 modes of material nature. But I am the one who has created these 4 divisions: Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, or Brahmacharya, Vanaprastha, Grahastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyasa. Krishna is saying, I have only created this. I only created the 3 modes of material nature. And according to the modes of material nature, different people will surrender to me differently. Okay. Then he also says, okay, by the way, why did I create this? I created. There is no work that affects me. I mean, somebody might say, oh, you created this, then there are these 3 modes of material nature, so it looks like it is unfair. No, Krishna is saying, no work affects me. Also, I do not aspire for any fruits of my action. So one who knows Krishna's position about this position also, one who understands this truth about me also does not become entangled. Says because he knows why I have created this. What is my goal intention in creating these different this creating in this material world, this for varna and ashrama and so on. He knows that I'm not doing this with any intention, ulterior motive. I have created this with the only motive to bring back all the jivas back to Vaikuntha. Of course, I don't aspire for the fruits of action also. I have created this as a matter of duty towards living entities who have come out of the Vaikuntha world. So Krishna in general doesn't have any kind of attachment to this material world. His only interest is devotees. Otherwise, he has no interest in this material world. Udasinavat. He's as if indifferent. He's as if indifferent towards this material world. But he's absolutely concerned about his devotees. Mm. One is understood to be in full knowledge, whose every endeavor is devoid of desire for sense gratification. So if somebody says, I know Bhagavad Gita, many people say, right, when we go to preach, people say, yes, 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 I have read Bhagavad Gita, I know Bhagavad Gita. Okay. So if you have known and read Bhagavad Gita, then all the endeavor, every endeavor of that person should be devoid of desire for sense gratification. That means that that person should not be living, doing anything for his own sense gratification. He is said by sages to be a worker for whom the reactions of work have been burned up by the fire of perfect knowledge. So one who is in this knowledge, because he will stop engaging in activities for sense gratification. Why do people engage in sense gratification? Because of their reactions of work, karma phala. So when one stops endeavoring to stops their endeavor for sense gratification, that means the impact effect of their karma phala has stopped. There's no karma phala. Because there's no karma phala, that person is not wanting to enjoy independent of Krishna. So we should understand this wanting to enjoy independent of Krishna and suffering. Both of these are because of our karma phala. When one stops enjoying, trying to enjoy independent of Krishna, stops the sense gratification, that means that technically the reactions of his work, that means that his karma phala has stopped. Are you able to understand this? This is very, very important verse. So once devotees come into Krishna consciousness, they start chanting and they make progress and they stop sense gratification. That means that their karma phala is gone. Their karma phala is gone. Because that karma phala causes people to try and engage in sense gratification. So here it is said that all his reactions of work have been burned up. Then one might ask, okay, then why is that person suffering in this material world? That is just Krishna's plan for us to purify us completely. None of suffering of a surrendered soul is because of karma phala. It is simply Krishna's mercy. Because otherwise we might take more lifetimes to become completely pure. Krishna might be accelerating that process because we stopped desire for sense gratification. A completely surrendered soul. Of course, if we still have desire for sense gratification, then our karma phala, our all that normal karmic process continues, but it is not same as an ordinary person, as any ordinary person, because we are chanting Hare Krishna. So Krishna will have special consideration for us. For other people, it is just their karma phala. Okay, you've done this, you have to experience this. Sorry, suffering or happiness you have to go through because this is the rule of this material world. But for somebody who is a devotee who is practicing Krishna consciousness and still has some desires, Krishna will still be merciful to the devotee. He will help him or her to make progress, to come to him, to go to him. But one who has stopped all sense gratification, his karma phala has stopped. His karma phala has stopped. In other words, this is a pure devotee. The pure devotee. He has anya abhilashita shunyam gnana karmad anavratam. He doesn't have any desire for any kind of sense gratification, nor mental speculation. He knows Krishna's position. He is firmly fixed in that knowledge. He is engaged as a servant of Krishna. and everything he uses to serve Krishna and try and please Krishna. Nothing for himself, nothing for his own sense gratification. Such a person, his reactions of work have been burnt. All his karma phala is gone. So Krishna is saying, such a person, what does he do? He abandons. So who is this person? This person who is now no sense gratification, completely in full knowledge of Krishna and his relationship with the Supreme Lord. What will he do? He'll abandon all attachment to results of his activities. He might be working, but he's abandoned all attachment to the results. He's not worried about what results he's getting. He's ever satisfied. He's ever satisfied. Whatever comes in his life, he will say Krishna's mercy. He will never crib in any situation. Ever satisfied. And he's independent. He's independent means what? First of all, he's not under the control of karma phala. He's not under the control of time. Second is he's not under the, he is not dependent on other living entities also. He's completely dependent on Krishna, which means that he's actually independent of everything else in this material world. And he does not perform any fruitive action. Fruitive action means for sense gratification. Although engage in all kinds of undertakings, he might be doing work just like another person who is in this material world. Like two people might go to the market, one is a devotee, one is a non-devotee. If you look at the activities of a devotee, it just looks like the activities of a non-devotee. He's also going, he's looking, he's seeing, okay, is it nice, what is the quality, how much is the cost, he's talking about all this. Another person, devotee, he's asking, he's looking at the quality. Why? He's saying, okay, can I offer the best for Krishna? He's asking, what is the cost? Oh, these, people cheat. I cannot, waste Krishna's money. So let me make sure that I'm getting the best price. Hmm? All his thoughts are for Krishna, but the same thing another normal materialist goes, says, okay, I want the best thing, but I want to bargain. And then I want to tell my friend saying that, see, I got so much, whatever, right? Some false ego somewhere. So devotee might be engaged in all kinds of undertakings, but he has no attachment to the results of his activities. He simply works as a matter of duty, right? And he's not attached to. He's ever satisfied, whatever situation. Okay, success. Okay, failure. Okay, everything okay. Just puts his effort. That's it. His only intention is to please Krishna. This is a person in perfect knowledge. So if somebody says, I know something, I have knowledge, etc., etc., they have to come to this conclusion. Otherwise, it's useless. Okay, now is giving little more description about this person. Such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled. No out of control business. He gives up all sense of proprietorship over his possessions. He says, okay, this house is also Krishna. Whatever I possession is also Krishna's. I will use everything in Krishna's service. I am not the owner of this house. I am the servant of this house. This is called Atmanivedanam. So somebody who is completely surrendered himself to the Supreme Lord, this will be his mood. Oh, I am a servant in Krishna's house. Not that I am the master. And he acts only for the bare necessities of life. To keep the body and soul together. That's it. Okay, I have to eat. Yes, I will eat healthy food because I have to keep myself healthy. Why? So that I can engage myself in the service of Krishna. Also, it is Krishna's money. I don't want to waste Krishna's money on my health. So if possible, I can avoid unnecessary expenses on my body. Thus working, he is not affected by sinful reactions. So no sinful reactions will impact him. And he's also satisfied with gain which comes of its own accord. Oh, something came. Okay, I am not going to go behind anything. Something comes, okay, let it come. He's free from duality. Oh, heat, cold, good, bad. This person spoke nice to me. That person hurt me. No dualities of this material world. You're free from duality. So, which means that, okay, if it is hot, if it is cold, okay, wear something warm. That's it. Don't talk about that. Oh, it's so cold. Okay, this weather. Then we go into weather consciousness. We will not be Krishna conscious. So that's it. Okay, cold, you have to wear sweater, just wear a sweater over, close. That's it. No more thinking about this. He does not envy anybody. He doesn't look at somebody and say, "Oh, this person has this. I don't have this. Krishna, I'm serving you for so many years. You have not given me this, but this person is new." No, he does not envy anybody. He's just ever satisfied, like we said before. Ever satisfied. He's steady in both success and failure. Whatever it is, I am serving Krishna. If it works, it's Krishna's desire. If it doesn't work, that's also Krishna's desire. He's never entangled. He doesn't get entangled, saying, "Oh, why I did all this? Nobody respected me. Nobody, blah blah blah." Nothing. It's fine. Whatever Krishna's desire. So he is performing actions, but he's not entangled. He's not getting tied up in the in success or failure of his work, or in did he gain something or did not gain something. Nothing. Such a person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, so sure to attain a spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, because all of his activities will be spiritual. So he's sure to attain the spiritual kingdom, no doubt. Right? So Krishna has so nicely explained that knowledge from the point of, so I'm just going to summarize this part. So here he says that one has to know the transcendental nature of mind, transcendental nature. Then what happens? He will become free from attachment, fear, anger. He will become fully absorbed in me. He will take refuge in me. He'll become purified. He will attain transcendental love. Okay, but all of them don't do that. They will do according to their own desires. So all surrender unto me. As per their surrender, I will reward them. Okay. Then he says, one who is in this knowledge, how he works. He has no desire for sense gratification. He is given up all attachment for results of activities. He is ever satisfied. He is independent. He performs no fruitive action, and he acts with mind and intelligence fully controlled. He gives up all sense of proprietorship. He acts only for bare necessities of life, and he is satisfied with gain which comes of its own accord. He is free from duality. He does not envy. He is steady in both success and failure. He is never entangled. And such a person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, he will definitely achieve the spiritual kingdom, which is where Krishna started saying that one who knows my spiritual nature will come back to me. So Krishna is saying how that person will come back to him, right? These 5 verses are actually saying how that person will go back to Krishna, what all he needs to do. So if you want to go back to Krishna, these are the 5 verses, which are actually everything that we are taught as part of sadhana bhakti. These are the things that we are taught. Is it clear? Our path back to Godhead. If we can follow this slide, this one slide. I mean, basically, we chant, we eat Krishna Prasadam, we associate with devotees, we read Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, we will do all this. And so we'll go back to Krishna. Simple. Okay. Maybe I'll just try to finish this. So he's saying, okay. And okay, so lastly, he said, full contribution to spiritual activities. What is the spiritual activities called? They are called yagna. And then Krishna says that without this yagna, one can neither live happily on this planet in this life. What about next life? And for us in this Kali Yuga, this yagna is Sankirtana yagna. Simple. Chanting the holy names of Krishna. Congregationally, we can gather all the people in our house together and do Hare Krishna Mahamantra chanting, invite our relatives, friends, etc. And we chant on japa beads and we achieve this, right? And he's saying, okay, now I've said all this, but you cannot directly approach me. Just try to learn this truth by approaching a spiritual master. Approach a spiritual master. And this is the process of initiation. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul, the spiritual master, can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. So this is a self-realized soul. They're not just acting on the platform of knowledge. They are acting on the platform of realization. That is why the Shastra also says there can be different types of gurus, and the disciple will make progress up to the if so. For example, there's the 3 kinds of devotees which Upadeshamrita, nectar of instruction, speaks about. Kanishta, Madhyama, and Uttama. Guru also can be in Kanishta, Madhyama, Uttama. And normally it is said that we should approach a guru who is Uttama Bhakta. Then we will also reach that Uttama Bhakti. Hmm? So he's saying self-realized souls, they know, so they will give you the knowledge because they've seen all this. Huh? And then once you obtain knowledge, what will you do? Once you obtain real knowledge from self-realized soul, you will never fall again into such illusion. Why you will not never fall into such illusion? Because he will hold your ear and he will pull you up. Hmm? And because we are under the shelter protection of a spiritual master, you will see actually everything. You will see the reality. What is the reality? That all living beings are part of Supreme. So you will get that vision, but this takes time. But you can't act independently. You have to approach a spiritual master. You are submissive, serve him, inquire him from him submissively. Then you will see that all living beings are part of me. Otherwise, you can't are part of me. Otherwise, you can't. As a blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reactions of material activities. So we have to get this transcendental knowledge because knowledge will burn. Because, like I said, knowledge doesn't mean just gnana. Knowledge means application of that gnana. It will result, it will burn all our reactions, like we just discussed. In this world, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Now, Krishna is not talking about material knowledge. Krishna is talking about transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is mature fruit of all mysticism, mature fruit of all mysticism, which means that one might be engaged in yoga, Ashtanga yoga, this, that, and all that. The when that process, when people engaged in that process, they achieve mature results of those process. That mature result is this knowledge, saying, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swam. Krishna, you are the Supreme Lord. Hmm? And one who has become, and somebody might not have done mysticism, they don't know all this knowledge. Krishna is saying, not required. One who has become accomplished in the practice of devotional service, he enjoys this knowledge within himself in due course of time. So, which means that somebody told us saying that chant Hare Krishna, it is good for you. We just simply start. We don't bother about why, who, what is Krishna's position, what is my position. Over a period of time, as we practice bhakti, all this knowledge will be revealed to us from within. Tene Brahmarada Adi Kave. Krishna will reveal this knowledge from within as super soul. So, we don't have to worry about knowledge, but the knowledge will come. So, there are two paths for people to come to Krishna consciousness. One is the Gnani part. They come, they gain knowledge, then they say, okay, now I'm very clear, I'm going to practice Krishna Bhakti. This is one path. Then the other path is, I am not very intelligent. Okay, somebody I trust came and told me saying that you take this process. So I took up the practice of bhakti. That person will also get the same knowledge as this other person who came through the knowledge path will get. Same knowledge this person will also get in course of time. That is why in Krishna's in Krishna's view, there is nothing like knowledge. Devotee who is knowledgeable and the devotee who is non-knowledgeable. No, all devotees are come to that platform of knowledge, right? Because one comes through inquiring from Guru, another comes through service and surrender. Anyway, both of them will get the knowledge. So Krishna is saying, the doubts that have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. So we should do this, whenever, that is the reason why we have these classes, reading sessions, etc., etc. Because if we have any doubts, we should try to slash it with the weapon of knowledge. Prabhupada has given us all required knowledge to knock off all our ignorance. We just have to accept, hear and learn, and so that why this, what is our, so for example, somebody might ask, no, we don't have any doubt. Then why not full surrender? Why we are not fully surrendered to Krishna still? Why we are half-heartedly surrendered? Then we have to clear that knowledge, clear that doubt. So like this, at different level, at different stages, we will have different questions which need to be answered. The clarifications are there in Bhagavad Gita, specifically in Bhagavad Gita. To gain the knowledge, by gaining this knowledge, and for gaining this knowledge, we have to approach spiritual master, serve him, inquire from him submissively. Then he will show us the truth. That then we will understand the transcendental nature of Krishna. Then we will accept our position as servants. Then we will engage in the service of Krishna. then we will go back to Krishna. Mm. So beautifully in this fourth chapter, Krishna has concluded how we can achieve perfection. And see, this why I am doing this summary study is we will never be able to understand this flow when we are reading every verse and going into depth of every verse. We will not understand the flow and how nicely these verses are mentioned and so much connection they have with each other. That will, we can appreciate it when we do this chapter summaries. Okay, so that ends chapter 4. If anybody has any questions, I can try to answer. Hare Krishna. Any questions anybody has?